Huge unfortunate news in the world of Bungie Marathon. Game director Joe Ziegler has announced that he is stepping down from his position only 4 months after the release of Marathon. And this comes after the layoff of nearly 300 employees total from Bungie Studios, and the recent announcement of $750 million financial impairment at Sony HQ, mostly in part to their Bungie acquisition. And while it's easy to get caught up in the doom posting about my favorite hero extraction shooter, I want to use this video to provide context about the future direction of Marathon, because Marathon will continue to exist with or without Joe Ziegler. Sony is very invested into it, and I'm going to tell you why, because Marathon is actually kind of successful. Even though everyone says that Marathon is dead, consider that this game has sold in excess of 3 million copies. 2 million of those copies were around launch, which means they were full price, $40. And though Marathon cost around 200 million to 250 million to make, within that launch window they made $80 million, plus whatever Battle Pass sales they made. Over the course of the past 4 months, they've sold 1 million plus more copies, some of those on sale, some of those at full price. So let's just assume an average revenue for Marathon of roughly $110 to $120 million since launch. Consider that's only a 4-month window. And if Marathon continues to take in profits off the Battle Pass, off of game sales, there's a realistic chance that this game could make back its budget within the first year. And so you see why Sony is going to continue to pursue Marathon, but they are going to vastly change the direction of Marathon, and that is what the departure of Joe Ziegler is all about. Because Joe Ziegler came from Valorant. He was the perfect person to balance a first-person hero tactical shooter. He was the guy to make Marathon what it needed to be to actually succeed with the audience it was seeking. And I will say, he did his job. I wouldn't be playing Marathon if it didn't have the gameplay, the hero aspects that it did. It really put it in line with the type of games I enjoy the most. And truth be told, I was neither an extraction shooter guy or a Destiny fan, so I firmly put my love for Marathon on the design philosophies of Joe Ziegler. However, we cannot deny that Marathon is hitting all-time lows for its concurrent player numbers on Steam, dipping well below 10,000, almost hitting 5,000. But I will say, I think Marathon has picked up a console contingent over time as word of mouth has spread, as people have made content, and I can attest to that from the comments of my own videos. Being a console controller player, I have people who tell me about their experiences with controller console solo gameplay, and there's also an incredibly passionate art community for this game on Twitter and Reddit, and I think that has contributed to a sort of underground sensation for this game, where every day I do see new people playing, and they attest to the quality of the game. But the barrier to Marathon is really the style of the game, and with the departure of Joe Ziegler, this game is going to go all in on PvE content. I want to quickly read Ziegler's announcement because I really do respect the guy, and I want to let him speak for himself. Friday 7/17, my last day at Bungie, I'll be passing the torch of game director to very capable hands of Del Shaft III, who will guide the game along creative director Julia Nardin. So I think this is important because it tells you how much responsibility Joe Ziegler had, how much experience he had, how much he was able to take control of this project, because they have to split up his job between 2 people now, even though they've gutted the team only a couple weeks ago. They've been operating in strong leadership capacity for the team, ready to guide Marathon into the next chapter with a brighter future. Proud of them, excited to see them helm the future of the crazy world we've created together. Heading to something new, so Ziegler is not retiring. He is going on to other projects. Update us on when and where soon. I'm going to be following Joe Ziegler to other projects for sure. It is with a heartfelt thanks to all of you for supporting me and Marathon in our windy mission to bring a dark and terrifying space survival frontier to your screen. And we've talked before about how the attitude of the average gamer has changed, but we cannot fault Marathon for delivering the vision that, 1, that Sony asked for, but 2, that Bungie was inspired to make, because it really is an uncompromising vision of a future sci-fi world in which the human spirit means very little, but through the philosophy of live, die, repeat, you're trying to evolve the spirit. You're trying to experience exolution, become a new type of human being. There really is a lot of deeply spiritual and philosophical stuff in Marathon, the extraction shooter, but it's all under the surface. It's all under that massive barrier of hardcore PvP, which is why most people aren't gonna see it. Hats off to Joe Ziegler. He made a fantastic game that most gamers probably will never play, but that could change over time. I also want to make note of a couple more departures of senior leadership before we get into the future of Marathon, because these are important. Bungie veteran Lars Bakken retires after 28-year career, multiplayer designer as far back as Halo 3, and leading the design on Destiny and Destiny 2 expansions like Shadowkeep and Witch Queen. And this one is very notable because this really puts the final nail in the coffin of a Destiny 3. The Destiny 2 final expansion is truly the final thing we'll see of Destiny here in the 2020s, maybe even into the mid-2030s, because I do think Sony will eventually bring the brand back, but at that point, how much of the staff that made Destiny will actually be left? Probably none. It'll probably be like a Back for Blood, Left 4 Dead, Turtle Rock situation. Bakken was the senior design lead on Marathon, by the way, so he's responsible for much of the game design, like how you actually interact with the game, while Joe Ziegler was more the overarching guy, making sure the pieces fit together. And the final staff change that I want to note is Joshua Dean assumed the role of general manager for Bungie. And this is the departure of Scott Taylor, who served as the GM. That was a Bungie veteran. And these 3 layoffs are so important because all 3 of these game developers are most notable for being multiplayer PvP developers. And the people taking their place are more new blood, they're more under the Sony directive, and this all signals the shift from Marathon towards that PvE focus. And now we're going to talk about the new update that's coming to Marathon in only a couple days. This will be the Vault Breaker PvE mode, and this is going to put a single squad of players, even a solo player, into Cryo Archive, and it's going to be a mission-based system where you go through all 6 vaults in sequential order until you eventually fight the compiler. Pretty much all the loot you earn in this mode is going to be restricted in this mode until you finish it and are able to cash out some of your stuff into the PvP mode. You'll actually be able to get the biotoxic disinjector through this mode, which is kind of crazy, but let's be honest, if you're not good at PvP, you're not going to use that thing to its full potential. You're probably going to lose it in your first couple games anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. They say a roguelike PvE experience inside Cryo Archive where you take on progressively tougher vaults across multiple runs, acquire vault data to upgrade a special sponsored kit, or spend that progress on gear in the new armory that's specifically for this game mode. And we already saw the sponsored survival mode in Night Marsh, which the higher level players gamified into a boss speedrun trying to get into Upper Complex and get the high level loot. So it effectively was a PvE mode already. So this is PvE version 2 for Marathon. 2 tiers of vault data. Tier 1 vault data awarded for killing commanders, and reward is granted post-run whether you exfil. Vault 2 data earned from consecutive vaults solved in the same run. This is going to mirror that Upper Complex Night Marsh thing, except it's going to be about how many vaults can you open in a single run of Vault Breaker. Also note there's going to be some codex challenges related to this as well. Solve Vault 7, successfully exfil, so they want you to even get into a vault beyond what's required to get to the compiler. And a little bit of note to the balance changes they're going to make too. The Waster shotgun is going back up in power, and this thing might actually be able to 2-tap a purple shield now. I think this signals a large part of their change of design philosophy, how they're working way more towards the casual players, because Marathon has fostered a incredibly hardcore community that's very insular. It's very hard for new players to even get traction in this game. I think that's a large part of why the people who comment on my videos are coming from the solo perspective, because in solo gameplay with Marathon, the fights are much more fair, if you even have to take the fights at all, because fights are just much more risky. Everyone's focused on their faction missions, and I truly think solo is a better experience in Marathon right now, unless you're trying to get into that high-level PvP in Cryo Archive. They're also removing all precision damage bonuses from ballistic shotguns. The Circuit Breaker will be the only shotgun to have headshot multiplier. This severely nerfs the auto shotty, which has been dominant for the entire 4 months of this game being out. But not only they're nerfing auto shotty, starting with the mid-season update, there's a dramatic change to how throwables work. You can only load into map with a certain amount of grenades, because grenades will become a restricted infill item. Any combination of 2 bubble shield, chem grenades, EMPs, any grenades really, So this doesn't apply to ammo boxes, doesn't apply to smokes. However, I will let you know that there is a perk in the faction systems that will allow you to get grenades in your ammo boxes, so that is a way to circumnavigate this. I think smarter players are going to start stacking ammo boxes throughout the week, saving them for Cryo Archive. Maybe you should start doing that too. And the last thing I want to talk about is the reports that Marathon is getting a full PvE mode during Season 3, and this was directly from the mouths of some of the developers on Twitter. Example, active developer here saying, working as hard as we can to make this PvE mode awesome, see y'all soon. And I've seen many videos around about how they could repurpose the old maps to be PvE focused, using that sponsored survival strategy to create like a chain of missions that you would go through on each map as you bounce through each point of interest, you know, maybe make the infill time longer so you can actually tell a campaign story within these pre-existing maps. The Marathon team has also talked about major redesigns coming to Perimeter, which is the very first map of the game, to make it more dynamic, because as a new player you do spend a lot of time in there. And one of the things they've been very candid about is how few of the players in this game actually play Cryo Archive regularly. There seems to be a barrier around Perimeter into Dire Marsh and trying to leave Dire Marsh, because a lot of the missions within Dire Marsh were very difficult, and I think that was filtering a lot of the campaign-focused, story-focused, PvE-centric players. So I expect a lot of reworks in that area within Season 5 as well. But concluding this video, I stand by what I said at the very beginning of Marathon at its launch, that this game will be a grower. They're going to expand it to match the audience demands, the things that the existing Bungie audience, the Destiny community have been asking for. And at that point, it's really going to be a matter of, does the Destiny audience turn out? Do they put their money where their mouth was, you know? Do they actually play the Bungie game now that it's being built to suit them? Do they go back to that early 2020s thing they were doing with Destiny 2, where they were actively ragging on it, not playing the game, and then a few years later when it died, they started crying about how their favorite game was dead? I mean, if Marathon dies, that's effectively the end of Bungie, right? Bungie is going to get wholesale absorbed into Sony, and then all their franchises will just be developed by completely different teams. They're going to become Frankenstein abominations. Once the original team dissolves, you can't really call the franchise anymore. It's very rare for a franchise to maintain the quality consistency over multiple decades, but somehow Bungie gameplay has still been the best FPS gameplay in the market ever since they started making FPS, and that's really why I'm sticking by Bungie, and I hope Marathon can grow in the future. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Marathon.